Hello and welcome to this 59th episode of Questioning Woke Psychotherapy. My name's Michael Dewan-Herrick and I'm a psychotherapist and a life coach in private practice in London. In this video, I'll present an approach to diversity that I believe is far superior to the approach taken by critical social justice. What I'll describe is not limited by the constrictions of woke ideology, nor does it come with the same inherent problems. I'll explain this in a moment. My intention for this series has always been threefold. One, to provide a critique of critical social justice as applies to psychotherapy. Two, to acknowledge whatever truth or usefulness it brings to the table. And three, to offer a better alternative. This video mostly focuses on this third intention while also providing a critique of woke psychotherapy that clarifies why a better alternative is needed. As I've shared in other videos, I had the opportunity to teach a class on diversity at a training program in London for integrative psychotherapy from 2012 to 2017. This entailed teaching two separate 3-hour weekly classes. I was given the freedom to create my own curriculum, and what I will share represents a foundational part of that curriculum. Before I describe this alternative approach to diversity, I want to say why I think an alternative is needed. I'll keep this as short and simple as possible and focus on 5 main points. First, critical social justice starts with the assumption that diversity should be approached and seen through a lens exclusively focused on social injustices. Its concern is to identify human differences that divide humanity into groups that are either oppressed victims or privileged oppressors. Diversity has become so synonymous with social justice that when we hear or read the word, that's what most of us think of. When I taught my class, my working definition for diversity was simply human differences and how they are significant for the practice of psychotherapy. This opens our curiosity to recognizing that there are myriad important and impactful ways that humans are different, not all of which can be reduced to the binary social justice construct of oppressed and oppressor. While the concept of intersectionality expands and complexifies the range of identities that can be seen through this binary lens, arranged in a hierarchy from most oppressed to most privileged, it is still very limited. Race, sex, gender, sexuality, and ability/disability receive the most attention, while a vast number of other important differences are ignored altogether. My second point is that individuals are not recognized in the critical social justice approach. Everyone is reduced to the calculus of assumptions made about the constellation of their intersectional identities, and each identity is assumed to mean the same thing for each person who can be put into that category. So not only is the range of human differences constricted to a tiny subset of our actual differences, but the meaning of these differences is prescribed in a way that does not allow for the unique experiences and the way that individuals make sense out of those experiences. Critical social justice produces crude caricatures in our minds that may bear little resemblance to actual people. Thirdly, in taking these first two positions, the woke approach to diversity tends to foster social division. On the one hand, those deemed to be oppressed will feel resentment and a sense of learned helplessness. Those labeled as privileged oppressors will feel guilt and shame, or react with defensiveness. They might even feel provoked into amplifying their pride in the identity they feel is under attack, for instance, being white. Need I say this isn't a good thing? My fourth point is that critical social justice, its approach to diversity, is antagonistic to the idea of human universals, or the countless things that all human beings shared. Any such suggestion is branded as some sort of marginalizing suprematist narrative, seeking only the power to oppress. While diversity is obviously about differences, I believe that this ought to be explored and understood in tandem with a recognition of our common humanity. I emphasize this in my class, as it seems equally obvious to me that without it, the exclusive focus on differences inevitably leads to divisiveness and conflict. It produces precisely what critical social justice claims it wants to alleviate. And finally, my last point about the woke approach to diversity is this. It claims unquestionable hegemonic authority over what diversity should mean and what ought to be done about it. If it was willing to acknowledge its own particular and limited frame, then it could be appreciated for what it offers within the context of a broader inquiry. If it was also willing to receive criticism and address the potential negative consequences of its reductionistic approach, then maybe it should be given a seat at the table of serious discourse about human diversity. Otherwise, however, I say the bouncers of reason and decency should kindly escort them to the door. These 5 points are my argument for why an alternative approach to diversity is needed. The alternative that I'll describe is a more inclusive frame for diversity than critical social justice. It comes from the integral theory of the American philosopher Ken Wilber and is called the quadrants. I'll describe this in a moment, but first I want to say that the quadrants are just one of 5 basic components of integral theory, all of which provide different useful lenses for looking at diversity. I might talk about these other 4 in future videos. They're called levels, lines, states, and types. The quadrants, however, are a good place to start because they're more immediately understandable and useful. If you're enjoying this video so far, please give it a like, subscribe, leave me a comment, and share it with a friend. I'm determined to make this channel grow, and your support will be greatly appreciated. Thanks. All right, back to the quadrants. The quadrants are not some odd, esoteric idea cooked up by one wacky philosopher. Even before I learned about the quadrants, I was aware of the biopsychosocial model and its application to mental health from working in psychiatric hospitals in the early 80s. The Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, for instance, includes 5 different axes, which when taken together suggest a biopsychosocial perspective. For me, the quadrants, which I learned about later in 1995, merely elaborated on this and suggested more about the interdependent and interactive nature of these different dimensions. So what are they? Let's get the abstract part out of the way first. Wilber arrived at the idea of quadrants by combining 2 dialectical pairs. One, the interior subjective and the exterior objective. 2, the individual and the collective. Visually, if we put these dialectics on intersecting axes, we get the interior of the individual, the exterior of the individual, the interior of the collective, and the exterior of the collective. Or we could name these 4 dimensions: physical, psychological, social, and environmental. Now, let's ground this in some immediately recognizable examples. The physical dimension includes every part and process of our physical existence. This includes our skin color and sex, of course, but it's far more than that. It includes all of our organs and internal systems, for instance, the brain and nervous system. It includes our behaviors and patterns of behavior. As well, it includes our health and fitness, our illnesses, our injuries and disabilities, our age, the acuity of our senses or lack thereof. As well, it includes what we put into our bodies, be that food, drink, drugs, medicines, or toxins. It's simply everything the body is and does. The psychological dimension includes everything that arises subjectively in our mind, such as thoughts, feelings, moods, beliefs, intentions, aspirations, insights, confusion, mental imagery, intelligence, and worry. How we construct meaning out of our perceptions is part of the psychological dimension as well. The social dimension includes every relationship we have, whether near or far. Our immediate family of parents and siblings, our extended family, our local community, our tribe, our ethnic culture, our nation, our place in the global human family. This is situated in an internal dimension as it has to do with our intersubjective connections with others. What ideas, values, and priorities do we share? What language do we share? What cultural narratives unite us? In what ways are we in conflict due to opposing ideas, values, and priorities? This applies in a dyadic relationship between 2 people, but also at the scale of cultures and nations. The environmental dimension refers to the physical setting that an individual is situated within. This includes one's home and neighborhood, where one seeks recreation and where one may travel to. It includes the physical infrastructures of roads, communications, networks, buildings, public transportation, waste removal systems, food stores and food distribution systems, hospitals, schools, prisons, and so on. It also recognizes the physical components of disparate economic realities in terms of all of the above. It considers the different effects of different environments, such as metropolitan versus rural versus wilderness. And now it also needs to consider virtual environments where many of us spend tremendous amounts of time. It should be added that the present needs and physical impact of other human bodies is part of the environment. The subjective dimension of the social quadrant has this corresponding external or physical dimension. It should be obvious that I have not exhausted what can be included in each of these four dimensions, but hopefully I've given sufficient examples to stimulate your own thinking. My assertion is that having a powerful curiosity about what is of particular physical, psychological, social, and environmental significance for any given individual is what allows us to begin to approximate an understanding of them. This ought to be the first step toward being of any use as a psychotherapist. From this perspective, it should be starkly obvious that it is profoundly limited to zoom in on a person's skin color, sex, or gender and construct our understanding of them predominantly through assumptions about what these markers mean to them as an individual. While the four quadrants give us a lens for recognizing the full range of human diversity, they also show us our common humanity. We all have a body, a mind, a set of social relations, and a physical environment where we live. Physically, we have a beating heart and breathing lungs. We eat and drink and shit and piss. We move about, we sleep, get older, experience pleasure and pain. Eventually, we all die, and we all know it. Psychologically, we have thoughts and feelings. We have beliefs and dreams and fears and longings. We experience victories and losses. We move through different moods. Socially, we all have parents and a family, even if we don't know or like them. We're all recipients of some form of cultural knowledge, whether we like it or not. We share a language with our own group. Environmentally, we all live somewhere, whether in a palace or on the street, and this has an impact on the quality of our lives. We're all in need of safety, and to different degrees are potentially vulnerable to environmental hazards. Again, I haven't exhausted the list of what's included in our common humanity. Given the countless ways that we are different, we might imagine that there's no way to meet in a so-called intersubjective field. We might conclude that accurate empathy is impossible. But when we also turn our attention to our shared humanity, we find there is a thread that holds us all together, as unique pearls on the same necklace, so to speak. It connects us. The woke approach to diversity is horrible at facilitating any such possibility. This applies to psychotherapy as well as communities, corporations, the media, you name it. Wherever it is found, divisiveness is generated by critical social justice. The quadrants offer a useful tool for psychotherapists. It's the backbone of a complete biopsychosocial assessment at the beginning of therapy. This then facilitates a more holistic orientation to working with individuals. It also provides a very useful framework for clinical supervision. I've had many years of experience presenting clients in this way in supervision, as well as supervising individuals and facilitating groups supervision using the quadrants. In essence, it aims at evoking the unique presence of a client in the room. This is like how a fictional character can begin to feel real when the author has provided enough particular information about them. This, instead of some avatar that represents a diagnostic category, whether out of the DSM or the critical social justice playbook. Have you ever read a novel or watched a movie and felt that a character was two-dimensional? Or just a representation of a stereotype being used by the author to make a point or advance some preachy moral agenda? This makes for bad literature and film. Even actors who play the villain, if they're good, try to find some way to humanize their character in a particular way. It's not a place to reduce people to stereotypes and advance our own moral or political agenda. The quadrants offer one powerful way to establish a proper ground for meaningful psychotherapy to occur at all. Well, that's it for now. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other. And I invite you to direct your attention, curiosity, and appreciation to the miraculous uniqueness of each and every person, including yourself. Bye for now.